Hello again everyone and welcome back to the download. It's been a long time since I've done a download, and today, kicking our download series off again, is Adam Clark from Sharing Minds. Adam, welcome to the download.
Thanks, Ronnie.
It's
Glad
great
to be here.
Great to have you, mate. So, we'd sit here on the couch and we'll have a little bit of a chat and talk a bit about you and your history, etc. And one of the things that, I always find our audience loves to hear is your story. So you've been running Sharing Minds for 11 years now?
Yep, just over 11 years.
Yeah, which is fantastic. I mean, credit to you to run a business, over 11 years. Most businesses have failed well and truly by then, sometimes multiple times as well. So prior to Sharing Minds, what's the Adam story?
It's interesting. So I have always been a technologist. I've always worked with technology. I actually got into computers, came home from school, did something to my dad's computer. He was a builder. And I had basically 3 hours before he gets home to actually get his building package back up and running. And that was it. I was into computers. From there, the journey was very much, yes, I enjoy the geekiness, as we call it, but at the same time, I like talking to people. I liked solving their problems. So for me, I went through a number of different roles in a number of different IT organisations, from fixing computers through to event management in the Asia Pacific region. And I got into public service at one point. And what we had is the public servant, and I was relieving him while he went on long service leave. And he turned around to me and he goes, "Adam, we've got 10 months worth of work to be done here. I'm gone for 8. I'll see you when we'll finish off the last 2 months together." And what actually happened is 8 weeks later, I was sitting there and going to my manager and saying, "Okay, I've done all of this. What's next?"
10 months in 8 weeks?
Yeah.
Well done. Was it poorly scoped, or were you just
really
good?
It was a combination of scope and just the mere fact I was motivated to get things done, and I managed to convince my manager to help me hire someone to help me with it.
Now, you were in the public service, so motivated to get stuff done, taking a project from a long period of time into a short period of time. A lot of the time that happens is by putting in lots of hours, but you're in the public service. So am I to assume that you didn't have to put in crazy hours to do it, or how did that happen?
Back then, no. What it was is I reassessed the workload and saw a couple of ways we could get jobs done easier, by doing some scripting, by talking to a few people and rearranging the workflow, which just helped us to get it done. However, when we got that done and I walked to my manager and said, "What's next?" he said, "I'd like you to go and talk with these people at Microsoft. They're looking to buy this product." And this product was infamously called SharePoint. Well, back then it wasn't.
What was it called?
A product called Encompass.
That was it, Encompass.
Yes. Yep. And if you know where to look, there's still references to Encompass in even Office 365 today. Right. However, in doing that, what I found was I was finally getting to do the two loves of my life, which was I got to play with the technology, but I got to talk to people about their problems and figure out how that came together. So that was the start of the journey into SharePoint.
Yeah. And so how long did you do that for before you saw an opportunity to start your own?
That's another interesting story. I spent a lot of time, I moved out of public service very quickly after that, back into the corporate sector, and spent some time within some interesting firms, both small and large globals. And I was very fortunate that the global that I was working with brought me across to the very first global SharePoint conference over in Redmond. And I also happened to have my wife there. Yeah. And while we were there, I was talking through a few bits and pieces, and basically my wife turned around to me and said, "Look, you're talking about these things in this way. Why don't you have a go yourself?"
Okay.
So hence...
Behind every great man is a great woman.
That's it. And I have to say, after 11 years, I would not be doing this without my wife.
That's lovely to hear.
She's still 100% behind it and helps out in the business where she can, even today.
So let's just stop there for a second, right? Because I think that that's something that a lot of people who start businesses don't necessarily realise as they're sort of doing a business. It's the power of the relationship, and it's not wife and husband, it's whomever it might be that's in a relationship together, because running a business is hard going.
Yes.
It can be really tough.
Yes. And like most businesses, we are 100% self-funded. There is no external funding that has ever gone into the company.
So you bootstrapped yourselves?
That's exactly
All those
right.
years ago when bootstrapping didn't even exist?
Yes, yes.
As a term?
I'm very proud to say we've always been in the black. We have always done very well with our projects and delivery and so on and so forth. But at the same time, being a sole owner of a company, we've had our tough times as well. And that's the point where I think a lot of people that don't have that support behind them, they just go, pack it in and go home. You know, there's days where I might have woken up and gone, you know what, I just can't do this. And it was merely the fact of my wife standing up behind me and saying, you can do this, Adam, that made me put one step in front of the other. That's gotten us to where we are today.
That's excellent. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that, because, you know, it's really easy to sit here and talk about how wonderful it is and running your own business, but there's a couple of things that you've done that aren't necessarily common. Well, certainly one, and that is that you're a technologist who's now set up, over the past 11 years, a proven commodity, a successful business. And that transition from technologist to business owner, tell me a little bit about how you went through that, you know, the challenges that you faced.
So some of it comes back to where I started in the conversation. My father was a builder. He was his own owner builder. So, you know, the DNA of running my own business was always there. The entrepreneurial mindset to go out and make it happen was always in the brain. To combine that with the love of technology, what it was to stand up and take the risk and go, you know what, I can do this. Yeah. I can pick this up. I can bring something like these global organizations that have all these great methodologies, these great practices, all these resource pools, all these conversations. How can we take that? And the whole idea behind Sharing Minds was, how do we actually take that from the enterprise that's doing everything and bring that into a focused entity that can deliver on something really good in a niche sector like information management.
So what I'm hearing there is a lot of self-belief.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? And I think that's a critical component of any entrepreneur.
Yes.
Is, you know, and I always say, why would I pay a person that can until I prove I'm a person that can't? And that's really as it relates to my home handyman attempts.
That's it.
But it is that self-belief, and I think that's, I'm sure you would share this, that's a really critical component when times get tough.
Absolutely.
Because it's not always smooth sailing, you know, and it's so much easier when you start and there's you.
Yep.
And there's your time, and then it's like, oh, I've got to hire the first person now, and then, oh, how do I pay them? How do I manage them? But they don't work like I work, etc. That journey, I mean, how many people are there now in Sharing Minds?
So we're at 24 people today.
Yeah.
In Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne.
And you started in Brisbane?
We are still headquartered in Brisbane, so where we have 12 people at the moment. We also, our engagement with our clients is based around a question of why. So with every project that we start, the first question we go, I'll put it another way. They all come in and they say, I want to do a SharePoint intranet. I want to do an Office 365. I want an Azure, all of that. Our first point is to say, can we stop talking about the technology and go, why are you wanting to do this project about an intranet, about a portal, about some type of analytics or whatever it is? We want to take the technology out and understand why. By understanding why, the technology writes itself. So
Simon Sinek would love to hear you speak. He's always about people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you're saying is, we don't want to deliver what you want, we want to deliver why you want it.
That's right. And in fact, some of our projects have been very terse in the delivery, because when we've asked the why, we've sometimes had to say no.
Right.
No, client, you don't get this.
Yeah, customer's not always right then, is that what you're
correct. Hearing? The customer isn't always right. The reason we exist is to help the customer deliver upon what they need to deliver on their requirements, on what the executive is asking them to do. By asking the why, sometimes we need to help a customer change their perspective on things in order to deliver the outcome that they really need. And
I think you again, you know, like we talk about self-belief, but in that we also talk about maturity of consulting. I think a lot of consultants struggle to make that next jump of, you know, I am the expert in what I'm doing, and therefore they're paying me for my opinion. So if I don't agree with what it is they're looking to do, by me telling them, I'm actually doing what they've asked me to do.
That's right.
Which is consult to them, not just, you know, go with whatever it is that they want. and deliver what it is that they think they want when I know that's not going to be the right outcome. How did you make that transition?
In one of my earlier jobs, I had a couple of people who got around me, and I can think of a few different moments where sitting and I didn't drink coffee until a few years ago, but they were on like their fourth cup of coffee for the day, and I remember one guy saying to me, he says, "Adam, this is the way you need to look at things. If you can put all of these into these boxes like this, you'll always be able to figure out the way to get through things." And he was very much referring to the consulting mindset. And
So what were those boxes?
so the boxes were basically the various areas of business, how the psychology of a different problem works. So when you're looking at SharePoint, we've all had good and bad SharePoint experiences. That's same myself. And what he was trying to help me to learn is to go, yes, you understand the technology, but if you don't understand why those boxes fit in that order and how to stack them together, you're giving something that their perception is incorrect. So by actually turning around, looking at the business, looking at the technical together, what we get is an outcome of which meets hopefully their requirements.
Okay, cool.
So
let's come back now. So you started sharing minds, and you said, you had some tough times.
Yep.
Talk to me about some of those tough times.
We all had the global financial crisis a number of years ago.
Well, we were the crazy ones who started our business in the height of the global financial crisis, right? And if that's not self-belief, I don't know what is, right? Some people might call it foolishness, but hey, we're still here today 10 years as well. So
That's
you were
it.
not so far behind us. You would have started probably just as the financial crisis happened, or was about to happen.
Yeah, not too far. We'd been going a couple of years.
Yeah.
We'd grown to just under 10 people when the GFC hit. I also had a little bit of personal tragedy in my life at that time, that I lost a family member. And that was a really trying time for me. I had some close people I lost contacts with in business as you went insular. And it really came to the point to go, what am I going to do here? Is this really worth it? And as you say, that's where the self-belief comes in. As a business owner, you go, you know what? This hurts, but I'm going to stand up. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to just hide myself away. There are people who are asking me to do things for them. There are, employees that I need to make sure that they've got work to do things. But in the back of your mind, as you're kind of thinking of all these things, and you're going, hey, I've got to be able to stand up. I can't just hide myself away. And once again, it comes back to the support of my lovely wife, Olivia, that she just was behind me every step of the way. And that's why I'm here today.
Okay, and your passion, right? Like, you are one of the few people that I've spoken to, and I've known you for quite some time now, but one of the few people I know who is so incredibly passionate about SharePoint and about the value it brings. And it's not the product, it's the output from the product that I think is what really motivates you. And
Absolutely.
How the product can make a difference to an organisation. So if we looked at that from that sort of lens, and I said, of all of the projects that you've done and taken on in the time that you've had Sharing Minds, what would you say would have been one of the most profound impacts that you've delivered as a business to an end user organisation?
There's a couple. If we look through what we've done, some of the early ones where I took on very early days a government contract, and myself and a couple of guys, we were working inside of a government project for actually close to 3 years on and off. In that process, we got to look at it through a different angle. So instead of being the bureaucrat that was delivering on the services or just the IT person, we were a contractor that was brought in to deliver an outcome under a specified procurement limit. How do we do that? We also had the opportunity to help bring in some of our competitors, or we saw them as competitors at the time, and we brought them in to help do things. So we got exposed to a whole range of different processes, different methodologies, different ways of thinking of things while we were still in our inception. The great thing about that is that project, it's gone on to bigger and better things. However, our project was the first project that was delivered on time, and under budget, and that was back then. At the other end of the scale, we've just finished in the last few months a delivery to a major airline, and once again this was a move from a non-supported technology system over to Office 365, so not just SharePoint, and in delivery of that project as well, through taking a lot of those learnings over the years, was delivered a week before it was supposed to be delivered, and was delivered on budget, which is unheard of in large IT projects.
Okay, so that's great, and I get that you've delivered some great projects and you've delivered them on time, on or before budget. What's the profound impact that's had on the client?
On the client is
And
mainly...
it's not just because you delivered it on time, like the actual technology, we implemented this solution in SharePoint that delivered this outcome for that type of client.
Primarily, there were three main things across most of these implementations that we come across, regardless of whether you're asking for, and everybody asks for an intranet, everybody wants to go, I'm moving to this, but there's three key things that, if done right, have an impact on the business. The first one is transparency, is the first and foremost one. That from an executive level, I've got transparency about what is happening inside of my environment. That's going to create efficiency. The second one is that level of efficiency that is created because the transparency is there. So people are very aware of what is actually happening within the environment. There's no more walking in and getting 3 cups of coffee to figure out where my document is sitting today. It's right there where you know it is. And the third one is security. So in a day and age where we have so much information overload, what organisations are looking for is to make sure that their information is secure, whether it's inside of their environment or it's going outside of their environment. So those impacts alone those outcomes have a number of different items. One huge impact, we did a implementation for a client over in Perth a number of years ago. Through going through the delivery of that, we ended up saving them a significant 6-figure amount on their insurance premiums.
Okay, now that's a profound impact.
That was a profound impact. During the time that we were doing the implementation project, their processes were poorly managed. They were all manual. People had no idea what was going on. So being able to implement these processes into a system, and as you say, very passionate in the SharePoint space, this is why, because not only are we creating those areas of efficiency and transparency, but we're also saving business money. So, yeah.
And so when you're talking to clients about what it is you do, is there often an ROI discussion that takes place?
Yeah, absolutely. ROI and TCO, very important in the space that we work in, because people are either looking to implement these systems because they're looking to increase their profitability, so they want to know how long it's going to be before they see their return on investment, or they're looking to save money. Right. So they're looking to say, how can I get my workforce to be more efficient in what they're doing? So all the time, it's usually within the first 1 or 2 meetings, we have that type of a discussion.
Yeah, okay. So changing tack again, our business at Insentra is, we say we're partner obsessed, right? That's why we trademarked the term partner obsessed globally. Our whole essence, our whole reason for existence is to be there to augment or be the skills for the channel, right? For all of the resellers. If they have or don't have the capabilities, we could be able to do that for them, etc. Your business takes a hybrid approach. So when you started your business, it's very much a direct play.
Correct.
And over recent times, in the past sort of 12 to 24 months, you've started to get requests from other partners in the industry saying, hey, we need this SharePoint skill, which firstly is testimony to the reputation you've built in the industry, and we all know that this industry is as small as it can be. Everyone knows everyone and everything about everyone's business, right? What happens very quickly is when when something goes wrong, that spreads like wildfire. When something goes right, it takes a lot more time for that to trickle feed its way out. Right?
Yes,
that's why we all have marketing departments. So, what was it that you think was the tipping point there for you in shifting a lot of your business to go through the channel?
There are 2 specific things if we look at it. The first one is we've had this discussion off camera where we've talked about I'm a geek at heart. Yep. I've said it earlier, and the whole thing is, as a business owner, I love the technology. I do well at the business, but I love the technology. So the first thing was to turn around and go, I need to help get someone to come in. And at this point, I actually took a step back from the direct day-to-day leadership role within the business, and I brought in a general manager who I got them to come in to look after sales, marketing, the team in general, so that I could actually work around trying to figure out what the strategy for the business would be.
So hold that thought for a second, because I think we've now got something else here that's a real characteristic of an entrepreneur and a characteristic of someone who grows and builds a business, right? What I'm hearing there is I recognized that there were things that I wasn't able to do because I was spending most of my time working on what I was really passionate about. And I think I also heard, and the stuff that I wasn't actually getting time to do, not only did I not really want to do it, but it wasn't my strength.
Correct.
So I identified that I had something that's not necessarily a weakness, it's just not a strength.
Yep.
And you hired around your own requirements to fulfill and to actually augment yourself. And what was the outcome of that? Was it did your business change as a result of that?
Absolutely. So overall, we've seen over 25% growth year on year for the last 3 years.
Since appointing the GM?
Since appointing the GM. Took a little bit of time and a little bit of pain to reorganise the business. But the other one is once we were able to take that step back, we looked, and this is where the partner community came in and go, all of these guys we're competing against here, they're struggling just as much in this space, if not more, because they're great technologists, but they don't think about the business aspect of information management as well. So this is where we've gone and said, guys, can we stop competing? How about we partner on this? If we all make a little bit of money, we get a better outcome for the client. And that was where I was able to step back and go, we've got to change the way that we're looking at things.
Right. And so, I know the answers to these questions, but I'm curious, I know them from my perspective, I'm curious from your perspective, because partner to partner is, it's a challenge. There is always that niggling part in someone's mind that says, are they going to take my client? Are they going to take my client direct? You've got different personality types that you deal with from a sales perspective, where your partner might want to own the sale, but you know that it may not necessarily be going the way that... How have you found that balance of, gaining the trust and kind of managing a deal, but not really managing an opportunity?
It changes partner to partner and personality to personality. So
rep to rep.
Even within particularly some of our larger partners, where you have potentially hundreds of reps all around the country, the different nuances between them are there. Overall, though, we have a little bit of it's an internal unwritten mantra that says, look, if our partner brings us a deal, if the client comes and talks to us about something that's got nothing to do with the partner, we still go and talk to the partner first. We say, no, you have to transact through the partner that we are working with. We will not go and close that door.
Okay, and so I think that's a really critical point, is that you have a very hard and fast rule that you can stand up and testify in a court that says, no, once we're introduced by a partner, we won't transact direct with that customer.
Correct.
That's excellent.
In the years that we have been doing it, we have had one instance where we have gone direct because the partner themselves said, we don't want this, but we want you to have it. So
we don't want the risk.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
And that's only one time. We've actually walked away from another I think it's either 2 or 3 opportunities because they didn't want to go through the partner and we said, sorry, we're done.
Right.
So that was a hard one, particularly as we were growing in revenue. So we were spending a lot of time hiring new resources and building the company up. This was a couple of years ago. And it was a very strategic decision to say, no, this is the type of ethics that we want to have inside of our business.
And I think that integrity is super critical as a business owner regardless. You have a means of doing things. In fact, I literally, as I was coming here today to meet with you, I was on the phone with another organisation who also plays in the channel market like we do. And we were just having a chat and I said, the reality is I'm not going to go and use your people to, for me to buy a channel company's people to then sell to another channel partner, put margin on margin on margin. Yep. I'm like, you know what? My integrity doesn't let me do that. I'd rather just introduce you to and off you go and have a great time. Yep. And we've had the same scenario, by the way. In fact, for us, it was a little bit worse.
Yep.
Right? So we were 6 weeks, I think, into opening our doors. And I had a contact that I'd known for many years who said, Ronnie, I've got this piece of work for you. And at the time, 10 years ago, it was an $80,000 piece of work. And it was right in our wheelhouse and we were totally able to deliver it. I said, cool, here's our model. Who would you like us to work with to transact this with you? And the response was, no, I want to work direct with you guys. Well, you ostensibly will be working with us directly. You're just not going to procure from us. But you will still have the direct relationship. No, not interested. If you won't do it direct with me, we won't do this piece of business. I will go and take it somewhere else. And interestingly enough, he took it to somebody who couldn't do the work, who then employed us to do it. But at the time, I didn't know that was going to happen.
Yes.
And yet $80,000 just when you open the door, that's going to keep the business going for a matter of months.
Yes.
Right? It's not even, it was a significant, but I think unless you've got those absolutes in place, it's very hard to build trust. And we do, let's face it, we operate in an industry where trust is very, very easily lost.
Yep.
And it's very, very hard to gain.
We work in a society that's like that it takes years to build up, and it just takes the wrong conversation, and it's
And often it's the perception, not even the reality, right?
Correct.
And that whole expression, perception is people's reality. But sometimes we've sort of struggled is probably too strong a word, but we've been challenged by the time it takes to build that trust that, hey, you know what? We're not going to go direct.
Yep.
We're not going to steal your client. And that requires a lot of trust, and it requires that integrity that you were talking about. So has your business transformed as a result of having a lot more partner-based business now?
Absolutely. We're finding our overheads are a lot lower because we're not having to employ and put a lot more effort behind our sales channel in order to get work. We're also finding the repeatability within clients is we're getting a lot more repeat work, because when you're a small business, of course, when you're working direct and your account managers are always working on what the bigger, better deal is that comes next. Whereas under the partner channel, we're working with the partners and we're completing off work, and then their sales model is actually talking to the clients and coming along and saying, this is what we want to do next. It's actually gotten to a point now where our direct business is inversely proportional to what we're actually seeing in our partner channel.
Right.
Not only that, but we're not having to employ direct salespeople anymore. We're more looking towards how are we going to manage the partners, and the direct work we're doing these days is a lot more around organisations coming to us and say, we would like your specialist skills for this particular area.
Yep.
So it's an interesting place to be in as a business, where from where we talked about before that we started to where we are today, that it's more along the lines of, instead of actually taking everything, it's going, are we actually aligned to what the culture of this business is doing? Because we've had these talks, you and I, before, where it's kind of like, well, not all clients are the right fit for the culture of the organisation that we have. And sometimes it's easier to say, look, understand what you're after. I'd rather like to get you to work with these guys here because they're going to be able to help you more than we are.
So the ability, as well as a business owner, to say no, not just to the client, but to the piece of work, to ultimately benefit you as a business. All right, one more change of tack. So you're 11 years in, you're working in what, realistically, there's not too many organisations in Australia who have depth of SharePoint skills and who have numerous projects behind them, and also who have a team who have been with them for a long time. It's a very, very finite group of partners, yet it's a very evolving piece of tech. It's fundamentally core to a lot of what Microsoft is doing with Teams. OneDrive is back-ended by SharePoint. SharePoint is really underpinning a lot of that sort of M365 story now.
Yes.
So the opportunities ahead of you are
massive.
Nothing short of significant. What do you actually feel is going to be the next iteration for Sharing Minds? What's the next 2 to 3 years look like? Where do you think customers are going to take you, partners are going to take you?
I think there's, if I could actually get out my crystal ball and have a look, I'd love to know where exactly it's going to be. However, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a lot of development in the Office 365, Microsoft 365 space. We're going to see a lot more in the Azure space, and we're going to see that Office 365 Dynamics piece come together a lot more with Azure from the technology enablement side of things. I think we're going to see a lot more businesses that have been holding back on their technology to want to finally jump into the river, so to speak, and move to the cloud technologies. I think at the same time, so we also have in the last 18 months not put our toe. We kind of jumped into the river, in the freezing cold river of change management.
Yep.
And
a huge
one, yes. And we've had some really good success because in a lot of what we do in this collaborative space, we're doing a lot of change management as part of the projects to teach people where buttons sit on the evolving technology because it changes so quickly. We do a lot of training with organisations. So my general manager and I, about 18 months ago, decided to put forward for some change management, and that's been evolving a lot. So now we're seeing multiple streams of organisational change management, but it dovetails so nicely into the collaboration piece that we're doing, where we're helping everything from rollouts of new intranets through to people replacing their entire desktop and mobile fleets around the place. And it's getting to a place now where we've got a good set of intellectual property that says, hey, guess what? You can take these objects and you can sell them. That's where I think Sharing Minds is going to see. We'll always be doing the services and the tech. It's core to who we are. But at the same time, it's looking at those products and services that can help to evolve that. And mixing those two together is always going to be delivering much greater outcomes to our clients.
Yeah, I think the change management thing is a really massive market opportunity. I think it's I can't remember the statistic of what Microsoft have pegged it at, but it's in the billions.
Yes.
Over the next coming years. Maybe you should change your company name to Changing Minds.
Well, I'm the little anecdote is everybody always says that doesn't know we're technologists. They go, Sharing Minds, are you guys psychologists? And I have a little giggle and I always say, well, with some of our clients, never know we should be. But that
Change management, though.
Exactly. Change management, that's where it's coming in, because you are psychologically helping people to go, I'm in this role and I'm in this role. What does actually rolling out a new intranet or giving me a tablet that allows me to get to new data, or whether I'm doing cognitive services and facial recognition, how am I teaching the people who come in and instead of punching the card, they got to smile at the camera? Those kinds of change management is mixing not just the technology, but process and people's psychology together.
Absolutely. I think the psychology and change is tough anyway. Right? Most people, I don't know if you've ever read Who Moved My Cheese?
I've heard of it. Haven't read it yet.
Heard of it?
Yeah.
Well, I would say to everybody here, if you haven't read Who Moved My Cheese and you struggle with change, it's a fantastic read. But a lot of people do struggle with change, and they typically fall into one of four different kinds of being. And I won't steal the thunder of the book. And you can even YouTube it and watch a really cool cartoon that seems like it was made in the 1960s. About it, but the psychology of people to accept change, then to adapt to the change, and then to maximise what comes out of the change is actually an entire sphere in itself. And I think that in our industry, what we're seeing now is that the whole concept of adoption and change management is really critical, yet the psychology behind it for a bunch of IT individuals is an interesting transition. So the fact that you've identified that and you can see that as being critical, I think, is really important as well.
It comes back once again to the why. Why is someone taking this on? And we're now, I think it's 5 change management projects in over the last 18 months, some of them quite large, and 2 of them are moving into the next phase of change management. So organisations see real value in being able to figure out why they're getting a new piece of technology and how it's not just going to affect the CEO, but how it's going to affect the Annie on the reception desk as well. And that's what we're looking at, that they get real impactful change in what they're actually getting.
Yeah, so more in the 365 space, more in the collaboration space, more in change management, and something you mentioned as you were talking about the boxes, which I know you're passionate about and I know is critical, is the whole information governance.
Yes.
And I think, I'm about to do a video tomorrow actually with a new product that we're bringing to market here all around information governance, so watch out for that one. And I think governance around who can access what, and who gets to own the access. So I think that's also a really interesting
And
space.
how long they retain it.
How long
Because
they
you and I
retain
know,
it.
because we've been talking.
That's right. So, Adam, thanks so much for joining us here on the Download. Really been fantastic to hear your journey, to hear some of the challenges you had in what you've undertaken, to understand the value of partnership, not just in business but also at home, and the value of having someone behind you, value of self-belief, the importance of what it is you do, and your passion for why you do what you do. I think that actually is something that for all of our audience, they'd look at that and go, wow, I kind of see some of the things I need to make myself a solid entrepreneur, because without that kind of passion, the tough times become really tough. But when you've got that passion, you've got the great times, they're unbelievable.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
Adam, mate, thanks so much for joining us here on the Download.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.